Stanley County's history is full of legend, statesmen, industrialists, and educators, but one stands out among the rest. Franz Joseph Kron was born on November 14, 1790, in Trier, Prussia, now a part of Germany. He was the third of 10 children born to Jacob Kron and Agnes Stein. Trier is an ancient town and lies only a few miles within the German border, east of Luxembourg and on the Moselle River. The deep valley of the Moselle runs north and south through the mountains and is a beautiful region, much like the Yadkin-Pedi Valley, where Kron would settle in 1823. Between France's birth and 1813, Trier was occupied by the French under Napoleon. However, following the French expulsion at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, he moved to France. According to his diary, France followed his fortune and wound up in Paris. Though France was defeated, its culture was still perceived to be the pinnacle of civilization. There, he engaged in various educational activities and, according to his recollections, became an inmate of the city's public libraries. He spent the years between 1819 and 1822 traveling to the Netherlands, across the south of France, and into eastern Spain. He seemed to spend quite a bit of time in tours, and ultimately met his future bride, Mary Catherine Delamot. The couple were married in Paris on June 5, 1823. By September 1st of the same year, Kron and his new bride immigrated to America to satisfy their desire to see that new country and visit Mary Catherine's uncle, Henry Delamot. Henry Delamot was probably a French soldier of the Marquis de Lafayette and likely fought for the American cause during the Revolution, afterward settling in Montgomery County. France and Mary Catherine arrived in New York City on September 27th, then sailed south and landed at the port of Wilmington, North Carolina, in mid-October. According to legend, the couple reached the wilds of Montgomery County and their Uncle Henry's home, which stood near the old town of Henderson, by early November, where they found him shucking corn with his neighbors. France and Mary lived with Henry for about 11 years. During that time, Kron, and sometimes Mary Catherine, traveled the state. Kron briefly found work teaching at the Newbern Academy, then at the University of North Carolina, where he taught French. While at Chapel Hill, he befriended and lived with Dr. Elijah Mitchell. The two men remained friends and correspondents until Dr. Mitchell's untimely death in 1857. In 1829, Kron traveled to Philadelphia, where he attended medical lectures at the University of Pennsylvania. He returned home in 1830 and began to practice medicine in the Yadkin-Pedi River Valley. After a falling out with their aging and ever more cantankerous Uncle Henry, the Krons purchased and settled on an old farm on the west side of the Pedi River. The home was originally owned by the fiery Scots preacher William McGregor, to whom Kron attributed the hardy apple orchard that surrounded the house. Kron's move to the west side of the river tied his fortunes to the fledgling Stanley County, which was established in 1841. Besides becoming one of its first commissioners, he assisted in establishing its first public schools and served as one of its most esteemed physicians. Kron became famous for his medical practice, as well as his horticultural experiments, which he sometimes forwarded to the Smithsonian Institution for review. Upon the death of Henry Delamot, Kron's daughters, Adelaide and Elizabeth, inherited their great-uncle's property and legendary fortune, which included hundreds of acres and gold mining operations. Franz Joseph Kron and his family remained a staple of Stanley County culture, society, and politics for nearly 50 years. Though he and Mary Catherine called Stanley County home, they rarely interacted with the local inhabitants and forbid their daughters from interacting too deeply with any young men. Kron's wealth, education, and seclusion made the family legendary, if not peculiarities among the local population. When Dr. Kron died at the age of 84 in 1883, hundreds flocked to his funeral to pay their respects to the little German doctor. The Kron's home, nestled within what is now Mar Mountain State Park, is restored and open to the public. A shaded path behind the home takes one to the grave, as well as those of his family, Mary Catherine, Adelaide, and Elizabeth Kron. This is Jonathan Underwood for the Stanley County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thanks for listening.